This is a tutorial on how to create a data table within Excel. So all a data table is a calculation of a formula under different scenarios. So here we're going to do a multiplication table. So the calculation that we're going to do for the multiplication table is simply one number times one number. So I'm going to have two numbers here. I'm just going to randomly put in a 3 and a 4. Okay, and let me make that bold. You know, let's make that a little fancier. Times 4 equals, oops, and I'm gonna write that. Oh, whenever you want to just put like a number, to have a number show up, or something, whatever written form you want to show up in the cell and Excel not consider it to be a formula, just put an apostrophe there. So once you start off the cell with an apostrophe, Excel will know that you mean just show whatever I've written behind it. So you'll notice how if I just put an equal sign there, Excel, well, so I'm going to delete that. If I put an equal sign there and I start, you know, and I guess it kept that. Well, okay, bad example. Excel just puts in that apostrophe for me. Okay, oops, I'm going to bold that. I'm going to write an equation saying I want 4 times, I want that cell times that cell. Okay, that's my formula. To start off a data table, what you want to do is you want to create a row and a column of what's going to change. So I want to multiply two numbers, so one of those numbers will change up here, another number will change out over here. And if these were completely blank, the way in which I would count these off is equals the previous cell plus 1, and I would drag that formula across. Here equals that cell plus 1. Okay? Down here. Okay. Okay, so there are a couple things that we're going to do here. One is we're going to practice creating a data table. So for a data table, on the very upper left-hand corner, you want to reference your calculation cell. So your calculation cell is going to be, you know, that first number times the second number, which is that. So I'm just going to strictly reference that starting equation. Okay. I'm going to make this white, so if we decide to print out this table, we won't see the underlying calculation there. To create a data table, to fill in this entire table automatically, go to Data, the Data tab here, What If Analysis, and Data Table. And what Excel is going to ask at this point is, hey, on that row, on this row that I see, what cell does that reference? And I'm assuming that references this cell. And then it's asking, hey, on the column that I see, what cell does that reference? And so I'm referencing that cell. Okay. When I click OK, Excel is going to fill in the rest of the table based on this calculation, using this number as that reference and this number as that reference, and it's going to give me every permutation in between. Okay, so there we go, our fast way to a multiplication table. Okay? So that's one way in which we can fill in the multiplication table. Let's work on a multiplication table by using absolute references. Okay, so I'm going to narrow this down. I'm going to make this chart a little bit smaller. Actually, I'm going to widen it just a little bit so it looks a little bit more consistent. Okay, so delete that and delete that. Okay, so let's say, for example, we're not going to use the data table for our multiplication table, and I just want to fill in this this multiplication table by hand. I'm going to go 1 times 1. Okay, and as I drag this formula across, how does that work? You'll notice that the formula now is saying the formula has moved. The references on the formula have moved as I dragged my formula across. So when I wrote my original formula here, let me zoom in a bit so you can see the formulas a little bit better. When I wrote the original formula, it says multiply the cell above me by the cell to my left. So as I dragged this formula to the right, it did exactly that. It said multiply the cell above me by the cell to my left. Okay, but for the multiplication table, what I want is the cell above it, so on row 4, I want the cell in row 4 in the same column multiplied by the cell in column N on my same row as I go ahead and drag through. So the way that I want to fix this reference is I want this cell to move with me, the blue reference to always stay on row 4, and I want this green reference to always stay on column N. And we can do this by telling Excel to put in an absolute reference. So on the PC, if you click within the cell reference, so on the reference to the blue cell, that location, and I hit F4, you'll notice that dollar signs appear in front of both the column reference and the row reference. You want to cycle through, keep on pressing F4 until you just get a dollar sign in front of the 4, which is the row reference. There's a dollar sign in front of that reference. It's just telling Excel to keep that reference fixed, absolute, not moving. So I want the row reference of row 4 to not move, and as I drag my formula to the right, I want my column here to move. So I want the blue cell to move as I drag to the right, but I do not want the row reference to move as I drag to the drag down. For the green, what I want is the N, the column reference, not to move, but the row reference to move. So column does not move means I want a dollar sign in front of the N. Row reference not to move. So I don't want the column to move, so there's a dollar sign in front of the N. I do want the row to move, so there is no dollar sign in front of the 5. So again, I'm cycling through by pressing F4 until I reach the reference that I want. I'm going to press enter, and you'll notice that as I drag my formula to the right, it's referencing the same column on row 4 for that blue one, right? And the same row, the same column, but different rows as I'm about to drag down. So I'm going to select this entire row and I'm going to drag formula down. So again, I'm holding down the mouse key, dragging, I'm waving my mouse to the bottom right hand corner until it turns into a thin black cross, and then I drag all the way down. And because my references are now correct, right, it will always, that first number will always reference row 4, and that second number will always reference column N, and here the row will change, here the column will change, which is how the multiplication table should work.